I've always been sensitive to things that no one else can see, hear, or feel. Shadows frequently appear in my peripheral vision, and less frequently apparitions appear directly to me. I hear things that no one else admits to hearing, especially late at night. I am sensitive to temperature and can feel other presences in the room that don't seem to affect anyone else. I've gotten used to these phenomena over the years, but there was one time that stands out. My junior high school was constructed in 1923 and is rumored to be built on a Native American burial ground, a claim very characteristic of southwestern Pennsylvania. There is a history of Native Americans in the area, and the story of Massa Harbison's capture and escape from the Seneca Indians is taught every year in my district's sophomore history class. As we all know, however, stories about these often misrepresented groups are just that, misrepresented. The halls of my old school were rife with stories about the building being haunted by Native American spirits. Many teachers that stayed after hours told stories of doors slamming, objects being moved, feeling as though they were being watched. I could never tell if these stories were the teachers just trying to scare us, or if they were actual experiences. Late one night, after the final performance of our spring play, my best friend and I were wandering the halls of the nearly vacant school building while the rest of the cast gathered in the gym for the party. Most of the gates preventing one from getting into certain parts of the building were up, so as we would reach one, we would turn around and walk until we hit another. We continued making circuits like this, having the deep conversations that 8th graders do, when all of a sudden I noticed movement on the other side of one of the gates, down the hall, outside of one of the classroom doors. As I said, there have been many times that I've caught movement or seen things that others haven't, but this time, my best friend could see it too. Curious, we stalled and watched. It appeared to be a shadow figure. Not menacing, just there, kind of amorphous and dark. A quick glance at my friend confirmed that she was also seeing this. I started toward the gate, trying to determine the cause. Was there a teacher about in their classroom? If so, how had they gotten through the locked gate? Was it the shadow of a tree blowing in the breeze outside? No, there weren't any windows in that particular classroom. As we reached the gate, the movement ducked into the classroom, facing right through the closed door. Curiosity overcame me, and I whispered loudly, "Wait, come back," and reached a hand through the gate. My friend mirrored my movement, also reaching her hand through. We shared another glance as we waited for the figure to reappear. It did. The shadow came back through the door and reappeared in the hallway for a few brief seconds before fading into the darkness. My best friend and I still talk about this. We're still not sure exactly what we experienced that night 12 years ago. I continue to see things. It's gotten stronger as I get older. But nothing like this. Nothing where someone else has experienced it with me. We might never know what we saw that night, but I often wonder if anyone else has run into that mysterious shadowy figure.
Hi, I'm Jamie Markey.
And I'm Michael Tatum. I wasn't trying to imitate you. I was just trying to give it some flair like you do. I feel like I'm too laid back sometimes.
Oh, I feel like I'm laid back.
You're more animated than I. You're very laid back, but you're also just more animated. You have
well, that's
because
I sound like I'm a cartoon character. You sound like you're British.
I just look like I'm one.
you sound like you're reading novels and
sound like I should be sitting in front of a fireplace with a smoking jacket on,
teaching elocution.
And some kind of ratter at my feet.
Ratter?
A little terrier, a little ratter.
Oh, ratter.
Sorry,
I was like
a ratter. The ratter at my feet.
Ratter? I barely know her. And that's why I sound like a cartoon character. Oh, and this is School Intentions.
Hey, we got to it sooner than last time.
I know, and you didn't have to remind me.
I didn't. I'm so proud of you.
Let's check that down. I'm at a total of 2 now. So.
Not bad out of 30 episodes.
30. Today is our 30th episode.
Woo!
That's right. And our title today is...
What's our title?
Rarely pure and never simple.
That's from The Importance of Being Earnest.
Yep, you win this game.
By one of my favorite ever human beings. Oscar
Oscar
Wilde.
Wilde.
Oscar. Well, as he's called in his native Ireland, Oscar Wilde.
Wild. It's wild with an E. That way you know he's like legit wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so wild. He doesn't even give a fuck about the number of vowels in his last name.
It's true.
That's how you know he's insane.
That's right. Rarely pure and never simple.
Rarely pure
Which
and never.
could
Which was a response
probably-
to like the truth is rarely
The
pure
truth is
and never
rarely
simple. Yeah.
I feel like that could be the title of every episode.
So far, yeah, because it's
We could change the name from Ghoul Intentions.
to the importance of being earnest while telling a ghost story.
That's right. Damn it! That should have been our title. Fuck!
I mean, it just triples off the tongue eventually.
Yeah. Eventually. Once you get it.
It's funny because Ghoul Intentions is based. The name is a play on Cruel Intentions, the movie.
That's right.
That is based on Dangerous Liaisons. That is based on a book that was written in French. It's guess what it's called in French? Liaisons dangereuses. They just reverse the words and say it through cake.
Gosh. This is the best way to say anything.
It's why the French are so cool. They're gonna eat those carbs. They don't give a shit. They're gonna walk them off. And but the author Delaclos was his writing. That book was an influence on Wilde and his generation because it was a scandalous book about scandalous things.
And we love a scandal. Also, thank you, Paige, for that ghost story. Our cold open today. Very nicely done.
It's a good name, Paige.
Paige is a good name.
Want to hear more stories about things you see?
Schools are cool too. That whole, and I'm so proud of you, Paige. You did what Michael said before he ever said it, which is to stay there and let your curiosity get to you.
Yeah.
Curiosity killed the cat, but the cat has 9 lives, so it's fine.
Yeah. I don't show me somewhere where it says curiosity killed the ghost hunter. Doesn't happen. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't happen because now I've fucking done it. But, but I mean, curiosity killed the cat. But that's the cat. You're not a cat.
9 lives.
Not in this life anyway.
Well, and I wonder. I can't help but think of it from the perspective of the shadow. Like, did that bitch just call me back? Do I go back now? If I go back, am I doing what she says? Because she's in like 8th grade. Or am I curious? Yeah, I'll bite.
I think the ghost would probably want to be like, could you please tell people to stop blaming everything on Native American spirits?
That'd be great.
We get it, white folk. You're guilty.
So
and
great.
You awesome. You should be. But we've moved on.
Right. Yeah. Well, in a school too, there's so many emotions and things that go through.
Right.
That you wonder what
You
kind
look,
of energy.
poltergeists often strike people that are going through puberty, like young people. And so, like, think of all that energy. Think of just having a bunch of people going through puberty pinned into one building. Shit's gonna be haunted.
All middle schools are haunted as fuck.
Yes.
That's what we were saying. It's a fact. We've stated it.
my mom taught high school for most of her career, but she taught middle school for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Long story, but she just kind of moved to middle school for a little while to teach there, to take a break from high school. And she had some strange experiences.
Really?
In the high school, in the middle
didn't
school,
know
which
that.
was a middle. I went to that. She taught. I never went to a school that she taught in while she was teaching, except my last year of high school. But because she taught in a different town until she moved back home to teach here. But she taught the middle school where she taught for a couple of years when she took a break from teaching high school was the same middle school I had gone to. And I remember kids saying, oh yeah, there was a haunted bathroom that everyone said was really haunted, and there was this. And years later when my mom taught there, she was like, oh yeah, there's some weird stuff happened down there. But she won't talk about it because it's my mom.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, stuff happened, but it was probably just, I don't know. she kind of just cast it off like, oh, I don't know, it was probably a ghost or something. I'm like,
whatever.
That's how you're writing this off.
Yeah, my mom was a teacher as well, but she taught elementary school. And I think the scariest things that happened there were just like weird parents. And then one time, one of her students made me a mixtape, and I
made you a mixtape.
A mixtape, yeah. I was probably 4 years older than him at the time, so at that age, it's significant.
Yeah.
And on the mixtape was We all know it. I Want to Sex You Up.
What? Coming from
Uh-huh.
what? Wait, this is
Elementary
an elementary school.
Like fourth
Wow.
grade, I think.
Wow, they grow up so fast.
Yeah.
No, he just didn't know what that song
No,
meant.
he didn't. And at the time, I thought it was fucking hilarious. All the rest of the songs were great. I really enjoyed it. It was really funny.
This kid's got good taste. I'm sure he
know.
doesn't know that the song "Closer" by Nine Inch Nails is not appropriate to send anyone.
Yeah.
Well, you can send it to me if you are Jason Momoa or Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Or any of the Hemsworth brothers.
You can send it to me if you're Jack. My Jack. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, it's inappropriate.
For those that don't know what that song is, don't go listen to it on my account, especially if you're young, because it's not a safe song for young people.
But it is a good one.
It's so good.
It's so good.
And that music video was so creepy.
I know.
Those Nine Inch Nails music videos were... I was such a goth, like, industrial kid, too, when I was that age, so I was totally into that stuff, and I was like, ooh, this is disturbing. Oh, this is freaking out my parents.
Oh, yeah.
I was totally into it. If it freaked out my parents, which was kind of easy to do, well, it was easy to freak out my mom, not my dad. My dad was like,
Right.
Done it, been there, got the t-shirt. But my mom was like, my mom was a pearl clutcher.
Pearl clutcher from
and
way back.
I delighted in getting her to clutch them pearls.
My mom was not a pearl clutcher. She wanted to know too much. And it was like, Mom, back up off it.
My grandmother was like that. My mom's mom. So I guess my mother's properness was kind of natural rebellion from my grandmother. Because my grandmother was one of those old Southern ladies that just fucking knows everything. Born knowing it.
Yeah.
And born unshocked.
I think that's how my mom is. And my grandmother was much more reserved.
Yeah.
Very funny,
kind of
though.
like leapfrogs in the generation.
It does. Except I'm not a pearl clutcher.
You clutch your pearls at other people clutching their pearls, as do
I do.
I'm like, that's shot. Oh my God, you're
gosh,
offended
that
by
really-
that?
That makes
And then
you
I'm like,
clutch your
I'm
pearls?
offended that you're offended.
Someone get me pearls. I need to clutch them right now.
I will clutch someone else's pearls. It's a weird
Give me your pearls. And then they're going to clutch their pearls about that, and it's a cycle.
It's
Ay.
this horrible feedback loop of pearl clutching that never ends.
It's a lot of pearls, though. Someone's got to get some oysters and shit.
There's a dirty joke in there about pearl necklaces, but I won't make it.
Yeah, and oysters.
Uh,
Okay, so I get to go first this time.
Yes. So I don't. Okay. So this is a unique episode because I think neither one of us knows
Know
the
the other
story,
one.
anything about the story the other's doing, right? Because you've never heard of mine and I've never heard of yours.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I didn't know of mine either. Until recent
Okay.
hiccup, sorry.
Until a recent
I got a
hiccup.
Moscow Mule hiccup burp.
Yay!
Sorry
Let's
about
have a
that.
little sip of mine real quick. I'm having a Moscow Mule and coffee. Is that a weird thing? Do they cancel each other out?
You don't normally have them at the same time, but you almost always have them when you're over.
Because you have all the fixins, and
I
you have
do.
really great coffee.
I'm the hostess with the most-ish.
No, I don't really drink at home. We don't keep alcohol in the house very much because Brandon's not much of a drinker. Like we have like rosé.
That's not really either.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But so I come over here and I'm like party. Like I
Yeah. I end up having a lot of get-togethers over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of liquor.
because you
just
have
kind
you
of
have
happens.
the best party digs.
I do. It's a really good party house. It's just, that's facts. It's just
So
facts.
tell me about
Okay, so
your story.
I recently, not too long ago, was in Kansas City for a convention.
That's where Brandon and I met.
Yes.
Not at that convention, but at
Yeah.
Egg Convention
Yeah.
in Kansas City.
And so there were several listeners and hopefully some new listeners that I spoke with. But I was told several times to look up Stull Cemetery, among some other ones.
Okay.
But the Stull thing was creepy.
How's it spelled?
Stull.
Stull. Okay, I've never heard of it.
It's in Douglas County, Kansas. Okay. So I looked it up. I was like, I gotta do this shit. So here we go. Are you ready?
So ready.
In any list you find of the most haunted places in Kansas, sometimes even America, definitely the most haunted cemeteries in America, you will find the Stull Cemetery. For years, stories of witchcraft, ghosts, and supernatural happenings have surrounded the old graveyard. It is a place that some claim is one of the 7 Gateways to hell.
Oh.
We have a gateway to hell.
What are the other 6?
I don't know. I have a feeling there's probably
Voice acting.
Voice acting. Gateway to hell. Twitter. Gateway to hell.
Oh, Twitter is hell.
YouTube. Gateway to hell. So, Stull is an unincorporated community in rural Douglas County, Kansas, United States. As of 2018, only a handful of structures remain in the area. However, Stull has always been a tiny town. At its maximum size, the settlement comprised of about 50 individuals total. Since the 1970s, the town has become infamous due to the legend that claims the nearby Stull Cemetery is possessed by demonic forces.
50 people. Can you imagine growing up in a town of just 50 people?
Absolutely
or
not.
like not even, it's not really even a town. It's just an unincorporated little community.
It's just like 3 families that are all friends.
Well, you hope they're all friends. You know they're not all friends.
Right.
You know they're strife.
It's probably 5 families and like, extended. But then like 2 of them are frenemies.
I love it. There's probably like
It's like
one
the Real
family
Real Housewives of Stull.
there was like it's like the Real Housewife of Stull. I love that there's probably like the one rich family in town that everyone hates, but they're probably only richer than everyone else by like $10.
Right.
But they are technically the richest family in town.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's some like Shirley Jackson short story shit right there.
Yeah.
Because in a big town, there's a lot of... I feel like in a big town, people give each other, like a big city, like people give each other a lot of mental space because there's not a lot of physical space. And so there's less opportunities for like feuds and shit like that. But in small towns where there's a lot of space and not a lot to do, people find things to be hateful about.
It's true. Well, and everybody knows everything about somebody in a small town. But in this small, everybody knows everything because it's happening to them. It's so small.
Yes.
Okay.
That's crazy. I'm just that
graduating class of 2. Okay. According to legend, the gateway to hell is supposed to be located under an old crumbling church in the cemetery. There are supposedly stone stairs, that lead all the way down to hell. Every Halloween night, the devil uses those same steps to exit hell for the evening. So, if you're at the cemetery on October 31st, there's a good chance you'll get a look at the devil himself. Or his self, if you don't understand how words work. So.
that was great. The devil would really appreciate
I'm
that.
sure.
Quick. Can I comment for a moment about how the devil coming up out of hell every night and goes, cool, where am I going tonight? Oh, fucking Stull. It's like 50 people here.
Well, okay. We'll get there. We will get there. Okay. The legends also say that the devil has been appearing there since the 1850s and insists that the original name of the town was Skull, and that the later corruption of that into Stull was simply to cover the fact that the area was steeped in black magic. It was said that the witchcraft practicing early settlers were so repentant about their past deeds that they changed the name of the town.
Wow.
What is so special about Stull that the devil wants to visit? That's what we want to know. Like, why Stull? Like, what is it, devil?
I'm just harping on the fact that they're like, we have to hide our past. I know. Let's change one letter.
Right.
They'll never know.
And make it rhyme exactly.
And the letters kind of look the same. I mean, like, you could turn a K. You could turn a K into a T pretty easily.
It's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's just like whoever like puts out the price point on those fast food signs and they go, I just ran out of it. I don't have any periods, so
I'm just gonna go.
Whatever. So this bucket of chicken wings is gonna be $499. You know where the point goes.
They know, everybody knows. Or they put a comma there and it's very confusing. Okay, so what is so special is apparently it's because in 1850 a stable hand allegedly stabbed the mayor to death in the cemetery's old stone barn. Years later, the barn was converted into a church, which in turn was gutted by fire twice, each time on Halloween. Which is why the devil still visits. A decaying wooden crucifix that still hangs from one wall is thought to sometimes turn upside down when passersby step into the building at midnight. Stull is rumored to be the middle point of a satanic triangle and is responsible for converting fundamental Christian children into Satan worshippers. The devil also appears at Stull. I know. The coincidence of the Halloween fires is unsettling.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But, it's Halloween. People do crazy shit on Halloween.
Yeah, but in this tiny little town. Why?
Well, true,
Yeah.
I guess.
Because
odds are someone's going to talk.
Yeah. So the devil also appears and also in the 1800s. Why are they going to Halloween wasn't that big of a deal.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
The devil also appears at Stull on the spring equinox. He comes to visit a witch, one of his wives, that is buried there, along with their infant son. A grave in the cemetery is even supposed to hold the bones of a child of Satan who was born of the devil and a witch. The child was so deformed that he only lived for a few days, and the body was buried in Stull. Some say that his ghost may walk here, as there supposedly was a photo taken a few years ago that shows a werewolf-like boy peering out from behind a tree.
Ooh.
There's even an old tombstone bearing the name Wittich. It is located, Wittich, W-I-T-T-I-C-H. It's located fairly close to the old church. It's said that witches and occult groups are still using the church for dark rituals and black magic, or the area. There has been a connection to witchcraft in the cemetery for some time now. In fact, an old tree in the graveyard was once used as a gallows for condemned witches. They had to take the tree down a few years ago after it got struck by lightning. There's also an all but forgotten trail called Devil's Road with a strange history too. It is said that a man somehow managed to set fire to his own son by accident. Yeah, and on another occasion, a man was discovered hanging from a tree by the trail. An article in Time magazine in the early 90s said that Pope John Paul II ordered a private plane to fly around eastern Kansas while on his way to a public appearance in Colorado. The reason for this, the story claims, was that the Pope did not want to fly over unhallowed ground. Why? Because of Halloween, Satan comes there. Because of the equinox, Satan comes there. Because of all the other shit. With all this history behind the cemetery, kids and ghost hunters check it out all the time, and so much freaky shit has gone down, including people getting hurt or disappearing, that the police had to put up a chain-link security fence around the cemetery and keep it on 24-hour lockdown to keep the public safe from the cemetery.
Well, that's no fun.
I know. And this, safe from the cemetery, and the city safe from litigation, I would imagine. Disappearing, murdered, hurt, whatever. We should probably chain that shit up.
Maybe.
So the area is still regularly patrolled, and if you're caught in the area, they will give you a $1,000 fine for trespassing.
Damn.
According to the Lawrence Journal-World, from Lawrence, Kansas, the Old Stone Church was mysteriously torn down on Friday, March 29th, 2002. A man named Major Weiss, who owns the property, along with two other people who he declined to name, said that he did not authorize the abandoned church to be destroyed. Those who lived nearby stated that they were also unaware of the demolition, although one of them did say that a wall of the church had collapsed about 2 weeks before. Here are just a few more of the reports around Stull and the cemetery.
Okay.
There are reports of abundant paranormal phenomena from residents in town, raps and banging, voices often reported to be the voice of an old woman, weird clocks and indoor windstorms, ghostly children playing at night in the cemetery, time shifts and discrepancies, inexplicable loss of memory and disorientation.
Wow.
Stull was the reason The Cure refused to play in Kansas.
Really?
According to the legends, yeah.
The Cure?
I know, it seems...
How would they pass that up?
Before the church was demolished, it was said that bottles thrown at the walls would not break. A permutation held that if the bottle didn't break, you were going to hell. If it broke, heaven. Or vice versa. Depends.
I don't like that game.
I know.
The rules seem very unclear.
I know. This is why I wanted to look this up. There's so much to it. Which brings us to the next part of my story.
Uh-huh. Actually, I knew it. I could feel it coming. It's an actually.
It's a big ol'
Wait,
actually.
are you telling me that all these stories may not be 100% accurate?
Si es posible. So,
Well,
Stull was... Let's do it. And remind me of the Pope thing, because I don't know if I wrote that down. Okay, so Stull was...
Hey, Jamie.
Later.
Remember the Pope thing.
Remind me later.
Okay. Sorry. Remind me to remind you later.
Not going to happen.
Damn.
Hey, guys, just text me about the Pope thing if I don't say it. Okay. Or tweet me. I'm sorry.
I'll remember. I'm making a note.
Stull was founded in 1857 and was initially known as Deer Creek. I read one passage that said, no one seems to know where that name came from. As in they didn't know where Deer Creek came from. Which I'm like... Pretty sure there was a creek and like some fucking deer. The end.
I grew up near Deer Creek.
I did too.
Yeah.
You Deer Creek in Texas?
Yeah, Deer Creek,
Creek in Oklahoma.
It's a very common name.
Very common.
Because it's where deer go to drink, so you see them at a water source a lot.
It's not a fucking
Where
mystery.
Could the name have come from?
There's a deer and creek. There's not a creek made out of deer. There's not a deer made out of creeks. Okay, it was actually a creaky deer. They just spelled it wrong. He was real old and his bones were, That's what it was.
If you listen closely.
Okay, so however they got the name, it was never Skull. Eventually, which is so stupid when you think about it. Like, oh, skull, that means demon. No, it's just
we all have them.
We have. The more I read about it, the more I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Okay, so eventually...
You're going to piss off a lot of people
I
in
know,
Kansas.
I'm
We're
sorry,
like,
you guys.
We need it to be true.
It's true. It's not. There are plenty of other things that are true, and hopefully I'll get to those later. But this,
But not installed.
Yeah. Okay. So where was I?
Deer Creek.
Deer Creek, never said. Eventually, the town was renamed by the post office. And they just used the postmaster's name, which was Sylvester Stull.
I bet it used to be Skull, and he changed it at Ellis
Blah,
Island.
he's the devil!
It didn't.
And he just really liked the post office until the 20s when they closed it down permanently. But I think it was the 20s. But anyway, there was also never a mayor stabbed by a stable hand in the barn in 1850. First of all, there's never been a mayor in Stull. They don't have mayors.
They're not incorporated,
No.
so they wouldn't have a mayor, would they?
Nope. 2. The town was founded in 1857. So even if they did have mayors, they wouldn't have had one 7 years before it was even a town.
Right. I mean, that's a shit job.
Right. Third of all, there was never a barn transformed into a church. There is a church, though. During the late 1850s, the handful of families living in Deer Creek organized a church that met in the homes of its members until 1867, when a stone structure was built to house the Evangelical Emmanuel Church, where the sermons were preached in German until 1908.
Oh, that's cool.
I know, I thought that was cool. In 1867, a cemetery was chartered for the town next to the church. In 1922, those living in Stull raised $20,000, which is a lot in 1922 for a small town, to construct a new wooden frame church across the road. The following year, the church changed its official name from Deer Creek Church to Stull Evangelical Church because the name of the town change, and the old stone Evangelical Emmanuel Church was abandoned by the community in 1922. And over the course of the 20th century, the church slowly fell into a greater and greater state of decrepitude.
Decrepitude.
Did you like that?
I like that
I thought you
word.
would.
Oh.
Yeah, decrepitude.
That gave me a tingling sensation.
Right? It sounds like you have an attitude that is getting worse and worse.
I don't like your decrepitude.
I'm sensing some decrepitude.
Say that again this time without the decrepitude.
Right.
I'm just gonna start saying that to old people.
And now when you go up to an old building and be like, that thing has some tude. Decrepitude. All of this is free, you guys. All of it's free.
This is great. We are spinning gold here, people.
Oh no. Okay. So yeah. So the whole barn into a church, and it was an old building in the 50s. Not true. It wasn't in the 1850s. It wasn't built until 1867.
I will confess, when you were originally telling the story about the stable hand that stabbed the mayor in the barn, I was like, was the mayor a horse?
Oh shit.
Because that's
the name of a horse. Wouldn't that have been a great thing?
No, I just thought the town's mayor was a horse.
Oh, that's fun too.
They're like, let's be the horse will be mayor.
Yay!
Hey, if Caligula can.
That's true. Caligula. I said those words. Moscow Mule. Okay.
Woo.
So it turns out the whole mysteriously collapsed thing isn't that all that mysterious after all. The
Old
property
buildings fall down.
I know. The property is owned by a man named John Hayes, Haaseh. Haas?
Is there a lot of
Hayes? There are two A's. I don't
two
know.
A's?
Hayes. John.
Mr. John. We're just gonna call him Mr. John.
It reminds me of that old, that old Disney, or not Disney, Warner Brothers, the Bugs Bunny with Hansel and Gretel, and they're like Hansel. Hansel. So it's John Haas. Haas. That's so good. That witch in that is amazing.
I hope he's listening.
Too. This is appropriate because there was a witch in that too. Okay, so it is possible that Major Weiss owns the property as well, but Weiss soon found out what happened to the church because John was very open about it. He was interviewed by the same company that owns the Lawrence Journal World later. The west wall completely collapsed in 2002.
They do that.
So, according to John, a second wall had come down, making it a potential hazard for anyone who dared to mess with it, especially the curious kids who frequented the cemetery. He had a friend go up there to test out the remaining walls. He gave a nudge to one of the walls, and the whole thing came down. It wasn't a mystery. It wasn't even a secret. It pissed off a lot of people who wanted to restore the church. I suppose if there was a mystery, it would be whether or not the structure came down so easily. Or if someone was like, I am fucking sick of these kids. I'm going to go push this shit down. I'm tired of it. But whether it did or not, it was to protect people from the structure collapsing on them, not to protect them from supernatural forces or to hide the gate to hell. And I have a picture that I'll put up on the Instagram of the site with just like rubble where after it had all been knocked down.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Small towns are hell. They can be hell, but I feel like every small town has its potential.
This one kind of became a hell, but you'll see. After that, after the church fell down, right? The city decided to put up the security fence and no trespassing signs to help protect the graveyard from any more vandalism because now there's not even a church to see. Right?
Right.
Okay. During the 20th century, the settlement did suffer two major tragedies that a couple of myths support. The first occurred when a young boy wandered into a field that his father was burning and died.
Oh.
So yes, a boy was killed by a fire, but saying his father accidentally set fire to him is a pretty shitty thing to say.
Yeah, that's just bad storytelling.
It's cruel.
I mean, we should have sorry. I mean, I know the guy burned his son, but really, it's
But he didn't burn his son. His son wandered in the wrong.
Into a field that was burning. That is fine.
Yeah.
That's. Oh.
Yeah, it's like accidentally burned his son. Like he lit him on fire and was like, "Whoopsie!" Like no.
And it was like no.
Yeah. Oh. So the second tragedy occurred when a man was found hanging from a tree after going missing. Yes, those things did happen. Was because they were on the devil's trail? I'm going to go with a nope on that.
Yeah.
It's just two tragedies in the 20th century. That's it for this town.
And as awful as that sounds, I don't want to sound elitist about it, but I would expect something more spectacular if the devil was to blame.
I know.
Than a simple...
#be best. Okay, so what happened? Where did all this bullshit come from? The other thing is the Pope, the story of the Pope, right?
Right, the Pope.
I remembered it.
Thanks for reminding me to remind you. So, tell me the story of the Pope.
Okay, so the Pope. That Time article doesn't fucking exist.
And that seems like bullshit. I feel like the Pope spends a lot of time visiting places that aren't whole or sacred ground because part of his job is to go and be like, hey, let's talk about...
Let's make this some sacred ground.
Yeah, let's make this... I mean, he can make it sacred ground.
Right. So, a lot of times they'll say, oh, this Time said this, or a publication said this. It's always good to research and see if you can find it, because people will just lie and say that this is the name of that article, or the name of the magazine, to give their story...
Weird.
People to believe it, to make people
Fake
believe
news.
Fake news. Fake news about news. Okay, so Back in the 1950s, it seems a professor at the University of Kansas deliberately made up the story of the gate to hell as an urban legend. It grew as he repeated the story each year to his students. Teacher starts to tell a story, freak out the kids, pretty normal thing.
Right.
However, it grew and grew, and in 1972, so 20 years later, the story wound up in the university newspaper. Sound familiar? After that, going out to Stull on Halloween night to wait for Satan to appear became a rite of passage. Only, Satan never would appear because, among other things, the story was bullshit.
It's like, this is like a darker version of the Great Pumpkin.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, when you think about it, you have a bunch of college kids sitting around a cemetery, drinking, and I would assume drugging of some sort.
Wait, college
That
kids?
would probably be involved. And they're waiting for the devil herself. And, that's right, I said it. Nothing happens. They wait, and nothing happens. And this is how they're
the
spending
devil's like,
Halloween.
Gotcha.
Nailed it. So what do? Stupid shit. Some kids would steal things to show that they'd been there, and some would break things out of boredom or general assholery. Vandalism became rampant. In 1978, it was estimated that 150 college kids were in the cemetery on Halloween night. By 1988, nearly 500 kids showed up.
Lord.
Yeah, 500 people in a tiny graveyard walking around.
Yeah,
Stomping
shit's
it.
getting fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like spring break.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The sheriff's department turned them away the next year, but the damage had already been done. Vandalism and theft had done serious harm to the cemetery, and more importantly, to the families of the people who were buried there. Yeah. And most still live in Stull. There's even an episode about the Stull Cemetery in Supernatural.
Oh.
It's the season finale episode where Archangel Michael and Lucifer fight it out, or something along those lines.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen Supernatural at all either. I thought you were going to be mad at me.
No,
Everybody's
I mean, I know of it, and a friend of mine's been trying to get me to see it for years, and I just can't commit. It's
been so long now too.
It's older than the show is older than my last car.
Yeah.
And that's saying something.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's a lot of episodes I gotta watch. I want one day.
One day. I'm in there too. But I looked it up to see, just to make sure that wasn't bullshit. But yes, it's definitely in there. So also, glam rockers Urge Overkill. Do you know them? Urge Overkill?
That sounds familiar.
They did, I think it was in the 90s. Yeah, in 1993, they did their part to play up the legend when they released Stull EP. I know. Neither homages to the cemetery were terribly appreciated by the locals. There is no history of witches to be found. There is no history of black magic to be found. No devil has ever been seen in the cemetery. And the locals don't talk about their place being haunted. They don't talk about the cemetery being haunted or the devil or any of that stuff. They just want people to go the fuck away.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to be a witch in a community that small because everyone's going to know. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Makes no sense. Also,
the whole burning the witch or like hanging the witch thing, that would have been in the late 1800s, was as well past when
by a couple hundred years.
Yes, significantly. That was in the 1600s. So
yeah,
because I can't do math.
And it wasn't happening in Kansas at the time.
No, it wasn't.
Because Kansas wasn't occupied.
There was no town there.
Yeah. No.
So okay, in the article that covered the story about John and the church, John Hobbs. One 79-year-old woman who lives nearby and has nearly a dozen relatives buried at the cemetery said, "There's no devil down here. The only devils we have are the two-legged ones who write stories about it."
Ooh, I like her sass.
I love her, right? Isn't she great? So
she reminds me of I'm just picturing her as Betty White from Lake Placid.
Oh, that's good too.
Like she has great lines like,
this
is the part where if I had a dick, I'd tell you to suck it. Like Betty White says those words in a movie, and it just made me love her all the more.
Yeah.
And that's who I'm thinking of when you mention this woman.
I was going to say Betty Davis.
Betty Davis too.
Either one.
Pick
your Betty. Okay, so I'm sure that too also, she didn't love trespassers stomping all over her
fucking family,
yeah. And not just that. In 2010, the cemetery had 13 broken headstones, 11 more that were actually missing altogether, stolen by thrill-seeking paranormal enthusiasts who wanted to take a fucking souvenir. Yeah. Paul Mirecki, I think that's how you say it, chair of Kentucky University's Department of Religious Studies, in 2004 states that he knows of no allusions to portals to hell in the Bible. I'm not going to reread the whole thing, so we're going to just fucking take his word for it. There is actually a Wittich tombstone in the cemetery. Mm-hmm. It reads, Wittich, Anna A. Andrews, 1832 to 1910, John, son, 1869, Sarah, daughter, 1870. So I guess Satan had 2 kids that died young. That's all I can think of. And then also poor Anna, she only made it to 78 in 1910.
She was well ahead of the curve.
Maybe she really was a witch. And lived long for her.
Good for her.
That's
good
right.
For her.
Good for you, Anna. So, okay, anyway, for the record, the surname Wittich was first found in southern Germany, where it was extremely popular in the Middle Ages as a first name due to its use in a Middle High German epic poem written in the 12th century. Wittich was a mythical hero, and it is likely that the original bearer of the surname was the son of someone who was named Wittig out of admiration for this hero. It is a common name. It is not a mystery. It's not a witch. It's not even from a witch.
It's from an epic.
It's from an epic German poem. Now, could the graveyard be haunted? Of course.
Well, now.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I would imagine there's quite a bit of unrest from all the inconsiderate and disrespectful shit that's gone on in that cemetery. Mm-hmm. But if you want to go looking for ghosts in cemeteries, leave this one alone. For fuck's sake, the citizens of Stull don't want you there, and the cemetery has suffered enough. Also, keep in mind that there are a few truths to this legend. One is that, yes, trespassing on Stull Cemetery could bring maximum fines of $1,000 and up to 6 months in jail.
That's a lot of dollars and that's a lot of months.
It is.
For an evening that will not really be interesting for you.
Right. It's just not worth it. And I read some stories of people who lived there saying, like, people would get so stoned and drunk, they would go to the wrong cemetery and be waiting for stuff. And then people would joke about, like, they'd probably get more action in that cemetery than in the Stull Cemetery. But, yeah, so that's the actually of the day. That's
a good actually.
I know. It's all bullshit. All of it is just made up by... And I love the idea that this... and this is kind of funny too. This happened to me actually because there was a house on my street that was vacant. It was always vacant when I grew up. I was young. This was before we moved way out into the country too. And so we'd ride our bikes and walk by it and everything. And you know, if a house is vacant, you go in the backyard and you look in those windows when you're a kid. Like, what's going on in there? When you're a kid, you would never do something like that when you're grown up.
Not during the day.
Yeah, and so when you'd look in the back, that was where the kitchen was and a dining room, and there was this big painting still on the wall. And I mean, it was vacant the whole time we were there. Mm-hmm. So I started telling people that was haunted, and I got my older brother in on it, and so we'd be like, this house is haunted. Well, you know that's why nobody lives there, is because crazy stuff happens. And if you go look into the back in the kitchen, like in that area, in the back window, there's a painting. And if you look, things in the painting move. So we tell people that. Very funny, whatever. Like a decade later, I was back in that, after we moved, I was back in that area. And I was with somebody who lived on that street or nearby. And we were driving through to get somewhere else. And they told me, they were like, that house is haunted. And I was like, what?
Go on.
Like, go on. And they were like, oh yeah, like it's always vacant. It still was vacant. And they were like, it's always vacant. People will move in, but then they move out. And in the back, there's a painting. And if you look in it, things move. I've seen it. And I was like, oh shit, it worked.
Now, there are 2 kinds of people that would react to that experience. There's you that would be like, hey, I did it. It's like hashtag win. And there's people that would be like, I'm psychic.
Oh yeah, no, that wasn't me. I thought it was hilarious. I didn't tell them either. I was like, that's fascinating.
They wouldn't.
Tell me more.
They wouldn't have believed you anyway.
That's right.
I think I've told the story before, but there is an old cemetery in the town where I grew up, and it was known for like there was a lady in white that would like appear at midnight among the headstones, and I interviewed someone for a story I was writing for my high school newspaper on Halloween, and she had seen, and several people that she still hung out with had seen this woman in white appear right as the church bell tolled midnight, and she'd see her. They were all like on the opposite end of the cemetery. They could see this figure, this long flowing white figure that would just kind of appear and then disappear and then appear somewhere else and then walk and then disappear and then appear somewhere else, and kept doing that. And I was like, oh, that's a good story. And then years later I was hanging out with someone and I told that story at a gathering, and someone was like, wait a minute, was this such and such cemetery? Wait, who told you that fucking story? And I was like, this person did and this person did. And then she just started fucking cackling, and she was like, yeah, it's true. I mean, they saw a woman in white. It was me.
Bitch in white.
Bitch in white. Hashtag this bitch in white. And it was very clever, very lo-fi. All she did was, like, it was a prank they were playing on this group of kids. And she was like, yeah, I just dressed in white, like a white Halloween, ghost outfit or something. And I had like a black sheet over it. So I would just like be walking, and then I'd cover myself in the black sheet. And then I'd walk over and then uncover the black sheet. And so it would look like I would pop in and out of existence in different little places because they were far enough away that they couldn't really see that. They couldn't make out the details. And I'm like, that's brilliant. And that was like a huge story. When I wrote that story in the newspaper, that like it got a lot of reaction. Suddenly people wanted to go out to that cemetery and see it. And it was like, oh my God, it's haunted. Never been haunted. There's no white woman among the graves there ever. Because I looked it up later. I'm like, there's no story of that shit.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
So sometimes...
Yeah, so it makes me think of this professor just trying to get his students a kick out of his students or whatever. And then it just becomes this whole other thing, and it gets spread around. I read one story about a woman who had never heard the stories, but her daughter went to Kansas, to University of Kansas, KU, University of Kansas. I don't know. I should know, but I don't. And so she, maybe it's not UK, because then it would be UC.
Well, and the UK's already taken.
That's true. By an entire country.
Whole country.
So she said that her daughter came back from school and was talking about it. So it's just at the college, and
it's so great.
It spreads from there.
I love it.
Yeah, that's Stull Cemetery.
Well, let me go make us a couple more drinks, and I will get into my story.
And we are back.
We are back, refreshed, and ready to dive into my story.
Which is?
The Ourang Medang. It's spelled...
Do, 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 do.
The Ourang Medang. Do, 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 do.
Oh, wait, we can't say that.
Now, I had only encountered this recently. I hadn't heard of it before. It's a famous ghost ship.
I love ghost ships.
Yes, and Ourang Medang is spelled...
We haven't done any yet.
Huh? Yeah, right. Well, this is a pretty good one. And it's fairly recent as far as maritime history goes. Ourang Medang, it's two words. It's spelled Ourang Medan. And we'll get into the name as the story unfolds. Ourang Medang. Okay, now in the annals of maritime lore, there are, broadly speaking, two kinds of ghost ships.
Okay.
Now, the first is probably exactly what you're thinking. It's the literal ghost of a ship, a spectral vessel, manned by a crew long dead, doomed to wander the seven seas in perpetuity, and spoken of by old salt since time out of mind, usually to scare the shit out of less seasoned colleagues on ships.
Less seasoned colleagues on ships? Is that what you said? Okay. Yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, they're legends. There are some...
They're like mermaids.
They're like mermaids.
Maybe, but don't believe it if you see it on YouTube. It doesn't mean it's real. Mom.
No, whatever. Your mom just sees a mermaid clip and goes, "It's a vampire."
You're not wrong.
Now, examples of this type of ghost ship are pretty, they're all over. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. One of the more famous, to give you an example, is the Flying Dutchman.
Yes, right.
Which is an old story. I might go into that lore one day. It's too extensive to go here. But it was immortalized by Richard Wagner's opera, which is called The Flying Dutchman, and it's about a ship that's doomed to wander the seven seas forever.
I'd say that's the most widely known.
Yeah. But there are others. There have been apparitions of ships that caught fire and that they still see appear in bursts of flames on the ocean
Right.
every now and again. But that's the first kind of ghost ship. That's for, in pop culture, that's what we think of as a ghost ship. But an actual ghost ship, the second type, it represents an actual menace to seafarers. It is a physical ship that is drifting willy-nilly, abandoned by its crew, and sometimes
It's like a ghost town.
Yes,
ship.
exactly.
Okay.
And sometimes, and there are many of these that are
Right.
on record that go back as far as the 16th century, or excuse me, the 17th century. Many of them substantiated, and some of them, the vast majority of them are ghost ships for very obvious reasons. It's not like the crew just disappeared. They were like, oh yeah, we left because the ship, caught fire or something like that.
Right.
But there are several where the ship was abandoned for reasons that are not obvious, and the crew
Yeah.
never seen again. And the most
Yeah.
famous of this type was the Mary Celeste, which you
Yes.
may have heard of, and I'll just briefly talk about the Mary
Love it.
Celeste. She was found drifting at partial sail just about 400 miles from the Azores Islands off the coast of Portugal. This was on December 5th.
Portugal.
Portugal. This is on December 5th, 1872, just about a month, less than, actually, after pushing off from New York Harbor under the command of Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Now, though their personal effects, most of them anyway, and the ship's cargo of denatured alcohol were still on board, Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and his experienced crew were never seen or heard of again.
And they weren't missing anything. So, usually people will think pirates do it, but they weren't missing anything.
Yeah, the valuables were still the only thing. Now, there was a lifeboat missing,
Right.
and some of Captain Briggs's navigational equipment was
Gone as
missing as well. Also, there was water. There was like 4 feet of water in one of the holds, which is significant, but not an alarming.
It's not a sinkable
It's
offense.
it's not something that would make you want to abandon a ship, especially an experienced crew would be like, well, we're fine, especially because they were so close to land, or would have been at the time. So, but there were little things to suggest. I mean, there are all kinds of theories as to what happened. Everything from mutiny to a murderous former slave, and less fantastically, a faulty chronometer. All have been offered up by way of an explanation over the years, but the mystery still endures of the Mary Celeste,
What happened?
propagated by storytellers no less than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But we could talk about the Mary Celeste for hours and hours and hours, and that's not what I'm here to tell you
Maybe one
about.
day we will.
But suffice to say, the perils of seafaring provide storytellers ample material for hair-raising tales, whether of the first type of ghost ship or the second. The modern-day Dutch freighter, the Ourang Medang, gives us perhaps a unique example of both
Ooh.
of ghost ships.
Do.
Now here is the story, and this had to be pieced together. So go into it with a grain of salt under your tongue, because there's a lot to unpack.
Is that the saying, a grain of salt under your tongue?
No, I just made that up.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to be clever.
I just immediately thought, I never fucking knew that.
No, neither did I
Yeah.
until I just made
It is
happen.
now.
Now
Everybody just starts saying it, a grain of salt under your tongue. And then they won't say anything because I'm not afraid of being stupid. So I'll just be like, what? And now we know. Then nobody will ever ask, and then people will start saying it, and we'll know that you made it up the whole
Oh
time.
my God. And we'll be like, it means that when you see a painting and things inside of it move, to
Tell
take it with
everybody
a
it's
grain of salt.
haunted. Take it with a grain of salt under your tongue.
So now reports vary, but most accounts agree that the events that would bring the otherwise nondescript commercial vessel to notoriety occurred either in June of 1947 or February of 1948.
Okay.
Basically, what happened was this. Multiple ships intercepted a distress signal in Morse code going out over the Straits of Malacca between Malaysia and Sumatra. The messages made it clear that the unknown vessel was in urgent need of help. "We float," it read. "All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead." A string of incomprehensible dots and dashes followed, capped with the chilling words, "I die."
Ooh.
Now, 2 American merchant ships responded, the Silver Star and a ship named the City of Baltimore. The source of the distress signal was triangulated with the help of British and Dutch listening posts, and a course was set. The Silver Star reached the stricken ship's coordinates first. It's roughly about 400 nautical miles from the Marshall Islands, and they found her adrift, with no visible crew, her engines completely silent. Now, aside from the words Ourang Medang painted professionally along the hull, nothing about the vessel really stood out. Ourang, incidentally, is Indonesian for man. Medan is the largest city in Sumatra, so the ship's name translates to man from Medan.
Okay.
The hull was undamaged. She seemed, for all intents and purposes, a normal, seaworthy Dutch freighter. The Silver
What's
Star.
a Dutch freighter?
It's a freighter that comes from the Dutch Indies.
Okay.
It's just that region. It's got a particular design to it that's specific to that region. So
but it's the type. It's the type of ship,
it's-
not where the ship is from.
it is.
It is where
It's the
the ship is
type
from.
of ship that it's known by its type because of where it comes from.
Right.
That makes sense?
But the ship is from.
The ship is a freighter, and it was from the Dutch Indies or the Dutch Indonesian
But it had a
area.
Dutch Indonesian area.
Yeah.
So it's Indonesian.
Yeah.
What-
Well, so the Dutch.
trying to understand.
Okay,
I'm
I know.
sorry.
So this area.
I'm tired, y'all.
I know. This area of islands near where we are now, the Marshall Islands. Excuse me, not the Marshall Islands, but Malacca and Malaysia and all that. Like the Dutch have a heavy presence there, or did.
Oh, okay.
In the middle, in like the first part of the
Kind of
20th
like
century.
the Virgin Islands were Dutch.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. So
Okay.
a lot, and that's true of a lot of islands in the Pacific Ocean.
Dutch knew how to relax.
And to colonize. So.
And to
So I'm assuming, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming that it's a Dutch freighter because they knew, like, okay, well, the name is Dutch Indonesian, Ourang Medang, whatever.
Okay,
and
okay,
so it
gotcha.
makes it a Dutch freighter. I don't know that there's anything that makes it like, oh, that's the design of a Dutch freighter. I think all
Okay.
freighter is the design of the ship, and Dutch is the
area. I didn't know.
the source.
Right.
Yeah. So the hull was undamaged. She seemed, for all intents and purposes, a normal, seaworthy Dutch freighter. The Silver Star hailed her. There was no response. Attempts to make, meaning they were like, which is what ships do when they get close to each other,
she
and the
didn't
other ship is,
in
she
return.
didn't back. It's like driving on the highway, and you get little kids to be like, and like
Yeah.
if the truck driver is really cool, they're back.
Yeah.
Attempts to make contact via radio were met with eerie silence. So the captain of the Silver Star organized a boarding party and prepared to get up close and personal with whatever
All
was going on. What awaited the boarding party was the stuff of fucking nightmares.
Tell me everything.
Well, firstly, dead sailors were all over the ship's deck. And they weren't just dead, their faces were contorted in masks of fucking terror. Eyes were wide, and their arms were out in front of them, frozen in rigor
Like
mortis,
protecting them.
as though, like a defensive gesture.
Ooh.
Like they'd fended off unsuccessfully some kind of attacker. Even one of the sailors' dogs, said to be a terrier, was in the same state. Frozen in terror, snarling, eyes wide. Poor thing. And the
How
captain...
dead were they? Like, how long had it been?
They couldn't tell, but rigor mortis had set in. So,
But it wasn't anything where they had
They weren't
always-
rotting.
Yeah, because
They
then
weren't rotting.
that's because as gross as this is, but when a body starts to rot, then
Mm-hmm.
you see they look like they're having these horrible
yeah,
fear.
but they have to be
expressions.
dead they have to
But
be
that's a
decomposing
while.
for a
Yeah,
while, and
that's-
there's no mention of the bodies being that
Decomposed.
dead.
Okay, got it.
So, and mind you, and this was also in an area that was well sailed at the
Right.
time, so people would have
well
would have
traversed.
found it, because again, drifting ghost ships like that are a hazard.
Right.
So the captain himself was found on the bridge, no less frozen in terror than his crew. The bridge officers, also dead, had all huddled together in the wheelhouse and chart room as if attempting to barricade themselves in. Likewise, the engineering crew were discovered below deck at their stations, their limbs also outstretched in defensive postures and their eyes agape with fear. The radio operator lay at the communications board, his hand on the dials. He had perished, indeed, while sending the distress signal. Now, horrifying as this may sound, what puzzled the boarding party from the Silver Star was the fact that no one, not a single crew member, showed any outward signs of injury. From their expressions, it was clear these men had died quickly and horribly, but from what? One popular account of the tale adds a spine-tingling detail to the fray. The boarding party, some say, felt an unaccountable chill in the boiler room, despite the furnaces churning away at a respectable 130 degrees. At this point, you may want to know, what did the autopsies find?
Yeah.
Good question. I congratulate you for asking it.
What did the autopsies find, Michael?
Alas, as to what killed these poor souls, no formal inquest was in the cards. Shortly after securing a tow line to bring the Ourang Medang in for investigation, smoke began pouring from the number 4 hold. Flames quickly followed, the boarding party evacuated immediately, and the tow line was cut. Within moments, the mysterious ship exploded with such force she lifted from the ocean altogether before crashing back down and sinking beneath the waves for good.
Wow.
Now, some of you might be saying, how convenient! But hold on, it gets even more frustrating. There is absolutely no record of a ship named the Ourang Medang in any shipping registry from the time period, but this is mentioned by the crew of the Silver Star, who were like, yeah, when we were trying to figure out what ship this could be, there's none that we could find that was in the area, and there was nothing, and they looked it up later. Apparently there was no ship called the Ourang Medang. Now, so it appears, at least at some level, that our floating horror movie didn't exist. Officially.
Uh-huh.
Now, before you cry foul and assume this means she didn't exist at all, one of the more popular conspiracy theories surrounding the Ourang Medang is worth taking a look at. Now, first of all, let's assume for a moment that the story is true, because it may well be. Given the evidently rapid nature of the crew's death and the violence of the explosion, a combination of potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin may well have been the culprit. This is a popular one with armchair detectives, as that particular pairing of chemicals made for a potent nerve gas used during World War II. At any rate,
I know this, yes. Yes.
thinking of chemicals may just put us on the right track. Let's talk for a moment about Unit 731. Ring any bells? Okay, if you're unfamiliar with this grisly piece of World War II history, brace yourselves. The infamous complex of POW camps in Japan-occupied China operated from 1932 to 1945 and was run by state-sanctioned sociopaths so depraved, so completely devoid of humanity and compassion that they made the SS look like a fucking Methodist bowling league.
Right. Worse than Nazis.
Worse, which is really hard to be.
Yeah. It was like the World War II, and probably most wars, but in particular, it was the most psychopathic, sociopathic people had all the power. And I mean, they do now, don't get me wrong. And but I mean, to an extreme.
And this is the kind of shit they did.
Yeah, okay.
Located in Harbin, Manchuria, a city whose proximity to Russia incidentally gave it a more European flavor than other Chinese cities. Unit 731 is described by at least one commentator as a laboratory conceived in hell.
Well, all right.
Now,
we know they didn't get there through the
through Kansas.
Through Kansas, yeah.
Now, basically, to maintain its grip on Asia without fear of reprisals, Japan set about developing a biological arsenal in secret, well away from the prying eyes of Allied powers. To this end, thousands of scientifically trained personnel, from chemists to veterinarians, were gathered under the command of evil mastermind Shiro Ishii and tasked with devising new and exciting ways of killing people. Christened, ironically, as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, frightened locals knew the facility where this horrifying research was conducted as simply a lumber factory. Indeed, the staff loosely referred to their victims as marutas, which means log.
Oh, wow.
Ishii, who enjoyed complete control over the grisly day-to-day minutiae of the operation, kept his designs a secret from all but his closest associates. When local prisons ran low on laboratory fodder for him, his secret police force swept the streets of Harbin for fresh victims. So, no simple roll of the dice decided its location either. Shiro Ishii saw the occupied Chinese as a constant flow of research material, living research material, and the remoteness gave him complete license to torture, maim, and kill with impunity. Men, women, and children alike were killed for no other reason than to record their reactions at the moment of death. Victims were routinely vivisected That is to say, surgically opened up without anesthesia just to see how their internal organs will function under the stress. Biological agents were tested on as many as 500 prisoners at a time.
Oh my God.
And this was so routine that we've lost records of how many people died. I mean, it was thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Now, and there's other things too. There's reports of them, all of them substantiated. They would send families to just walk into a grenade,
oh my God.
and then record the result and use that to find, well, how can we make the grenade more powerful? Okay, let's do this. Okay, another family, please. And they would just judge.
God.
They would just keep doing that until they finally decimated. Until the victims were so decimated, they're like, cool, now we have a weapon that's worth putting out of the field. I mean, it was fucking awful. And this is just, and then the biological agents they were developing in me was just a fucking living, breathing nightmare. Now, so getting back to the Ourang Medang and how this ties in, many people believe an unknown toxic gas developed by Unit 731 was accidentally released on board the Ourang Medang. Proponents of this theory go on to say that the cargo had been surrendered to the U.S. government following the war, which accounts for why there's no official record of the ship's existence. Possession of such agents would put the U.S. in violation of the Geneva Convention.
Right.
Now, evidence, direct evidence for any ties to Unit 731 are circumstantial at best, and at any rate doesn't establish the core story is true, and so any skepticism is justified, but it might interest you to know that as dodgy as some of this may seem, one very curious detail that has come to light as recently as 2005 does suggest that the story actually happened. And that is the fact that the CIA appears to have taken a keen interest in the Ourang Medang and to have taken the story at face value. That is the most powerful intelligence community in the world.
They were like, yeah, I get it.
Now, the first story, the story of the Ourang Medang first appeared as a series of 3 articles published between February 3rd and March 13th of 1948 in a Dutch-Indonesian newspaper. Its first mention in English comes to us that same year, care of the October 10th edition of the Albany Times in New York. Both sources cite the testimony of an Italian missionary in the Twangi Atoll who supposedly stumbled upon an unnamed German soldier claiming to be the sole survivor of the doomed Ourang Medang. The sailor, it said, died. The missionary related the harrowing tale to a reporter whose beat happened to be the export trade of Trieste, a guy named Silvio Scherli, in Italian.
No, okay, so...
Right. So let me unpack that for you.
Yeah.
The story first appeared in 3 articles, over the course of 3 articles, in a Dutch-Indonesian paper, and a little later, the same story was kind of translated in English for the Albany Times. And in that story, it seems to have originated from a guy who was
He said he was a survivor.
Said he was a survivor. Well, so the story was written by this Italian who wrote about the shipping trade of Trieste, Italy, and he wrote the story that I was approached by a missionary who said, well, that he was on this island, that this German sailor in really bad condition had died in his arms, telling him about this ship he had been a part of, and that he died from all this stuff, and this guy, this Italian who wrote about this, even though he didn't have any sources and all that, he was still he still had a good reputation as a good reporter, so they published the story. They published 3 articles about it in this respectable newspaper, and so it's again, you can take it at face value. No, I mean, here's the thing, another thing that kind of, the sailor died, the missionary related the harrowing tale, blah, blah, where was I? Okay, yeah. Now, where the testimony of the Silver Star comes in is unknown, because I don't know that it ever happened. No record of the attempted rescue is found in the Silver Star's logs, but that might have to do with the fact that the ship was originally named the Santa Juana at the time, before being purchased by the Graceland Shipping Company sometime in the 50s, and it's not uncommon for a ship's logs to get lost when it changes hands.
Right. It's like an apartment complex. FYI, if you owe an apartment complex money, just and it's been a few years and they've changed ownership, there's a significant chance that they no longer have record of it. And if they no longer have record of it, it can't be on your credit. Just saying.
And I guess, this was in the day before Carfax for ships.
That's right. Ship facts.
Now, so some people, there's long been thought that the Ourang Medang was the victim of some kind of supernatural thing, some like one of these flaming, lights that are often seen in the oceans or whatever. And it was like, did it have something to do with was it Bermuda Triangle-esque, even though I don't think it was in the area. Now, so this brings us back to the CIA. Now, some believe intrigue of a decidedly more paranormal stripe may have been at play in the Ourang Medang tragedy. C.H. Mark Jr. of Scottsdale, Arizona, appears to have been one of these. He was the assistant to Allen Dulles, the director of the CIA. And he wrote a letter in December of 1959 to a correspondent whose name has been redacted. The letter was released in 2003. I think I said 2005 earlier. It was actually, the letter was released in 2003 under the Freedom of Information Act. And it's not clear who he's writing to, but he's clearly writing on behalf of Dulles. And he says, quote, I feel sure that the SS Ourang Medang tragedy holds the answer to many of these airplane accidents and unsolved mysteries of the sea, end quote. And he writes this whole letter about the Ourang Medang story and taking it completely at face value. Like, if you read the letter, there is no question in this guy's mind that it's a story, that it absolutely happened. And this is the CIA writing this. Mark concludes the letter by asking his mysterious pen pal, quote, do you think something from the unknown is involved here?
Well, I mean, obviously,
end quote.
We don't know, so it's unknown.
So that, in so many words, is the story of the Ourang Medang.
So it's how do you know?
How do we know? How do you know? There's a lot to argue that it never happened, but there's several kind of compelling things to argue that it did. The fact that several international newspapers of note reported the story as true, and the fact that the CIA in the 50s, late 50s, were like, this happened. Right. So they may know something they didn't. And it's not hard to imagine, though of course there's no proof, that if the U.S. government was trying to get a hold of this chemical agent that the Japanese had surrendered over on this ship, that ship had to have been completely secret, and if the Silver Star had discovered it, they would have been told immediately, you don't talk about that at all. So I don't know, but it's a good story.
Makes me wonder too, a couple of things. One, if they had this secret agent, whatever, chemical
secret
stuff.
Agent,
chemical murdering machine. If they had it, maybe it was not an accident, and that it was done on purpose because the U.S. couldn't have it, and so maybe instead of knowing what was happening, maybe somebody knew and was like, "We're not going to let anybody else get this." Maybe the captain knew and decided to sacrifice the ship, or maybe the U.S. knew and they were like, we don't want to get in trouble. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Somebody did it on purpose. The other thing that I think is perhaps, and this seems more likely the more I think about it, the ship never sank. It never went down. It never was a ghost ship. It just was reported as such so that the U.S. could say, we never got no ship.
Ooh, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And maybe it's something the CIA started, which is why they would be so, this absolutely happened, and maybe it could be this, because then nobody would guess that they actually had the ship. I hope they don't listen to this podcast.
Well, that's interesting, but mind you that the CIA, this letter by the C.H. Mark guy, C.H. Mark Jr., was strictly confidential and not released until 2003. Right. So it wasn't like the story of the Ourang Medang was something that the CIA was trying to propagate. But,
Well, but I mean, if you think about it too, depending upon who was getting that letter, if it was someone lower in the ranks of the CIA, it could have been to help spread the story.
It could be.
It could have been.
It could have been.
I don't know.
But the fact that the name of that person was redacted is a pretty good indication that whoever it was high up.
Yeah, or it could just be so they.
Yeah, but I mean,
there's no context.
Yeah,
there could never be a context.
Who knows?
Well, and also, if it was somebody higher up, who says that they have to know the truth too?
Yeah.
The CIA, especially then, was notorious for keeping things secret from everybody. So,
I don't know. But it's a good story.
It is a
with
good
leaves
story.
you a lot of food for thought.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
Very good. I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of the story, but the whole thing together is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So exciting.
And now I want to do more on ghost ships because I did a lot of research. I originally started this, my topic this week was just going to be a series of ghost ships, but I'm like, they're all so detailed that I can't do
just
more
one.
than I can only do one at a time.
One at a time. You can do all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone, for listening again to this fantastical tale. Cool intentions.
Yes, this sea shanty.
Right.
Well, we didn't sing it, so it's not a sea
We
shanty.
did sing a lot.
We sang
I mean,
a
we
little
do.
bit.
We do sing a lot.
Do we sing a lot? I don't think it's a lot.
I sing weird things all the time. You know that about me.
That's true.
Everybody knows that about me at this point.
I just make up phrases like salt under your tongue.
Yeah.
And you'll
Together.
probably come back and
Salt under your
do
tongue.
that.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So.
And I make weird noises like...
That's true too. You do. Ooh, it kind of sounds like Doppler. Or radar. Or
Doppler radar.
sonar. Sonar's what I was looking for. Sonar's what
This is my echolocation device. When I'm in a room, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's my coffee.
Go to ghoulintentions.com.
Yes.
You'll find ways to submit your ghost stories.
It couldn't be easier.
Couldn't be easier for the cold open of the large episodes or the ghosticles. We go through anywhere from 4 to 6 usually.
Those submissions are so good too.
So
Please
good.
keep them coming.
Love them. And
Merch.
also merch. You can buy t-shirts.
Yes.
And we'll probably have some new ones soon. And you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Facebook fan page.
Yes.
And what else? What am I forgetting?
My quote. Am I gonna
Oh,
do my quote?
yeah.
Do you have a quote for me today?
I do. Well, normally we say the thank yous and the go-tos and the follows.
Oh yeah, and the go-tos and the follow. Yeah, well, while you're looking for your quote, I'll say that. Yeah, so yeah, go to ghoulintentions.com to
I said it already.
all that good stuff. Well, leave us reviews.
Oh,
if
there you go.
Like what you hear, and we hope you do.
That's right.
Because you made it this far. Go give us a review. It really helps us out.
Tell your friends.
Spread the
Tell your
word.
mamas.
If you get one of the lovely shirts, take a picture of yourself wearing it. Put that stuff online. Tag
Love
us.
it.
We love
Yes.
seeing it. And yeah, keep those submissions coming.
Mm-hmm.
They're so good.
Really enjoy it.
Yeah.
All
The odds
right.
are pretty good we'll use it if you put it in something.
Are you ready?
I did go to know what the title was from for the episode.
Oh, that's
So I
true.
feel like I've already kind of won. So I'm not gonna get 2 in 1. I'm just not.
You never know.
That's not true. Sometimes you.
Okay, ready? She's my friend because we both know what it's like to have people jealous of us.
Not The Hobbit. Okay.
No. She's my friend because we both know what it's like to have people jealous of us.
Is it from? I'm just guessing because there are several films I think it could be that are likely the source. I'm gonna say Mean Girls.
No. It's not Sunny. It's...
Cloudy.
No. Sunny, S-O-N-N-Y. Sunny. Sunny and Cher is from
Several things.
the
She
name.
was in Moonstruck.
The name.
Cher. What? I don't.
Think Mean Girls, but Cher.
Mean Girls, but Cher. Steel Magnolia. No, that's not. Fuck that. What am I talking about?
I know.
Mean
You
Girls,
just
but
had
Cher. The Witches of Eastwick.
Clueless!
What does Cher have to do with Clueless?
That's her name. Alicia Silverstone's name is Cher.
See, you can't just say Cher to a gay man and expect me to think of anybody other than the Cher.
Look,
So
I
I'm
can
thinking of
say-
I'm over here thinking of Moonstruck and
Yeah,
Witches of Eastwick.
But the other day I said Barbara Streisand to you, and you were like, "Oh, I don't really listen to her."
I said it was. I didn't say I don't listen to her. I said we were listening. Okay, context. God damn it, context. We were cleaning the house together, and we were listening to 90s hits, like 90s songs. And in the 90s, I didn't listen to a lot of Barbra Streisand or Celine Dion.
We did
and
have
a
to
duet
switch it
came on,
to
so I didn't know the
90s
song.
alt-rock.
Yeah, because that I knew. I listened to alt rock. In
Right,
the
I
90s.
did too. Yeah.
Not Cher or Barbra Streisand or Celine Dion or
It was
any
a
of the
Celine
divas.
Dion, Barbra Streisand
And it was
duet.
lovely.
And he didn't know it.
I didn't know it because I hadn't heard it in the 90s.
So how would I know that he wouldn't think Cher was from Clueless?
Well, now you do.
Now you do.
Damn it, and Clueless was one of the ones. If you hadn't said
So
Cher, I
good.
would have gotten to Clueless.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember
well,
her name.
I thought you were on the right track, so I was just trying to help
I was
you.
like, it's gotta be
Cher.
Clueless. It's
I mean, I
Mean
definitely
Girls,
remember.
Clueless,
Come
Easy
on,
A.
that's the Paul Rudd. That's the first.
Oh, it is. Oh.
Okay.
Anyway, we got distracted.
On that moment, on that note, moment note.
No moment note. On
Yeah.
that momentous note.
Remember.
Oh shit!
Shit. Do it again. Okay. Remember. It's okay to sleep with the lights on.